waiting for the right time. Yeah. All right, it's 7 o'clock. I would like to call our meeting of the Board of Adjustment to order. And we have one adjustment to the agenda. We have to swear in our new alternate member, Brian Ross.
Right. Repeat after me. I state your name,
I, Brian Ross,
do solemnly and sincerely swear
do solemnly and sincerely swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution of the United States,
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
that I will be faithful and bear true allegiance
to the state of North Carolina
to the state of North Carolina
and to the constitutional powers and authorities
and to the constitutional powers and authorities
which are or may be established for the government thereof,
which are or may be established for the government thereof,
and that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend
and that I will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend
the Constitution of said state,
the Constitution of said state,
not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States,
not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
to the best of my knowledge and ability,
so help me God.
so help me God.
I state your name,
I, Brian Ross,
do further solemnly swear
do further solemnly swear
that I will execute the office of the Board of Adjustment member
that I will execute the office of the Board of Adjustment member
for the town of Mills River, North Carolina,
for the town of Mills River, North Carolina,
without prejudice,
without prejudice,
favor,
favor,
affection, or partiality,
affection, or partiality,
to the best of my skill and ability,
to the best of my skill and ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you and welcome to the Board of Adjustment. Next, I would like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda as presented in front of you.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Agenda approved. Then we have minutes from our last meeting of January 18, 2023. Again, like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes. So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Minutes approved. Public comments.
There was no general public comment for tonight. We received one public comment related to the variance. So if the board would like to hear that, we could do so during the hearing.
Okay, thank you. Then, new business. One is the election of the chair and a vice chair of the board.
I nominate Bert Lemke as chair of the board. Oh. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Next. A vice chair.
I'm sure this thing's on. I nominate Miss Linda if she would be willing.
Sure. I second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
All right. Next on the agenda is the evidentiary hearing variance 2301 Mills River Storage variance request from 154-046 corridor overlay district architectural requirements for 0 Juji Drive, no address assigned. First, I would like to ask the board members to let us know if there's any conflict of interest with the subject property owner, or the applicant. If necessary, to recuse yourself, let us know. Anybody?
No.
No. Okay. Then I would like to entertain a motion to open the evidentiary hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
You. Then I've announced the number and everything already, but I have to read a long thing. So hold on. This is a quasi judicial evidentiary hearing. That means it is like a court hearing. North Carolina state law sets specific procedures and rules concerning how this board must make its decision. These rules are different from other types of land use decisions like rezoning cases. The board's discretion is limited. The board must base its decision only upon competent, material, relevant, and substantial evidence in the record. A quasi-judicial decision is not a popularity contest whereby opinions are considered. It is a decision constrained by the standards in the Mills River Code of Ordinances and based on the facts presented. If you will be speaking, please focus on the facts and ordinance standards, not personal preference or opinion. Participation in this hearing is limited. This meeting is open to the public and everyone is welcome to watch, and parties with standing have rights to participate fully in the hearing. Parties may present evidence, call witnesses, and make legal arguments. Parties are limited to the applicant, the town of Mills River, and individuals who can prove they will suffer special damages as a result of this decision. Other individuals may serve as witnesses when called on by the board. Witness testimony should be limited to facts, not opinions. General public comment is not permitted during the hearing. All witnesses must swear or affirm their testimony. In one moment, the clerk will administer oaths for all individuals who intend to act as a witness or provide testimony.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just realized I will have a conflict.
you do.
It'll probably require recusal. I do business with Mills River Storage. As far as, I have my camper stored there, things like that, so that probably cause another conflict where I probably should recuse from this one.
Okay, then we would like to call one of our alternates, and the first alternate is Mr. Foster. Thank you. That's okay. Welcome.
Don't you want to change nameplates?
Do we have to do anything else procedurally with this change, or is this?
Not that I'm aware of. Is
Okay. All right. Then, let's see, we have, there's no any other personal knowledge that the board members may rely on that is not in the record, like site visits, internet research before the hearing, talking to the applicant or the neighbors, etc. Anybody?
No.
All right. Then we would like to recognize any person wishing to petition the board to act as a party with standing.
I believe tonight it's just the town and the applicant.
The town and the applicant. So then we will need to swear those in.
Y'all just want to raise your right hand and, kind of like you're putting your left hand on the Bible. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Thank you. Next, we'd like to recognize our town planning and zoning staff to present the case and enter preliminary materials for the record.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. So I'm just going to summarize my staff report for those listening online. So again, we're here tonight to hear variance request 2301 from John Sikorsky, owner of Mills River Self Storage LLC, which owns the subject property at 0 Huey Drive, no address assigned. Again, as the chair said, the request is a variance from the corridor overlay district architectural requirements. If the variance is granted, the property owner, some discretions up to the board, would either not need to comply or comply at a level below the percentage requirements in the corridor overlay district ordinance. Just a little background. So Mr. Sikorsky submitted a zoning permit application Z 2296 on May 26th of last year for the construction of the self-storage facility on the subject property with a total of about 43,770 square feet of storage buildings. Town staff reviewed the plans, issued a review memo on June 30th. Among a couple items staff called out, one was the need to comply with the corridor overlay district architectural requirements. After discussion with the applicant and the difficulty of the self-storage buildings complying with this section of the code, Mr. Sikorsky submitted the variance application on January 19th. And then, as you're all aware, with scheduling conflicts, we called this as a special meeting for tonight. So the applicant, in summary, claims unnecessary hardship due to the property being below the sight line of drivers on Boylston Highway. Again, the ordinance claims that walls visible from the right of way are subject to these standards. And then the applicant also claims it's not feasible for self-storage buildings to comply with the architectural requirements incorporating natural or natural looking materials due to all the roll-up doors on the sides of the building. I did just want to note the evidentiary hearing was properly noticed. We mailed public notice letters to adjacent owners on February 21st, and a public notice sign was posted adjacent to the Boylston Highway right-of-way at Huey Drive on February 20th. And then we also ran legal advertisements in the Hendersonville Lightning on March 1st and March 8th. There's just a couple items in your packet tonight that I wanted to submit into the record as evidence. We have attachment A, which is the variance application. We have attachment B, which is the corridor overlay district ordinance excerpt. Attachment C is a couple different pages. They're just aerial views from Henderson County GIS of the subject property. And then one topographic map showing elevation changes. I just thought that'd be helpful. Since again, the applicant's claiming the property is below Boylston Highway. And then there's one additional view, a satellite view, but looking south facing from an angle of the property. Also in attachment C, it's that last page. And again, the subject property in this photo is the undeveloped vegetated forested property in the center. And we also have attachment D, the zoning permit application that was originally submitted. Attachment E, the most recently revised site plan dated January 17th of this year. And then finally, attachment F, I have the certificate of mailing, proof of mailing the public notice letters. That concludes my report, and just wanted to submit those items formally into the record.
Okay. You had one written comment also.
I'm looking at our procedures here. If the board would like to, we could do that under variance procedure item 13.
Okay.
And again, this is it's public comment for the variance case. So in the past, it's the board's or the chair's decision whether to hear that, because again, it's not a material fact. Someone's not here testifying. But if you'd like to hear it at that time, we'd be happy to read that to you.
We'll do that at 13. Then next, we would like to recognize our applicants to first of all, agree or object to any of the exhibits that were just presented by the planning and zoning staff. Yes, please.
I agree with what Mike presented. I wanted to thank the staff for their work here and all of you guys. And by the way, it was a good idea not to have this on the 14th of last month. We all would have been in trouble, being it Valentine's Day. I'm really here to introduce Jeffrey Brown, who is an engineer. He works for what, am I not talking to it?
Sorry,
Yeah.
at this point in the hearing, he's just asking for you to agree
Okay.
or object to the exhibits, and then
Okay.
he'll call you up at a later time. for
I
your testimony.
apologize.
You're fine.
No
Thank
problem.
you.
Thank you. Next, we can address questions to our planning and zoning staff based on the earlier presented information, facts. Nothing?
At the time that the application was submitted, it does not part of the application require a listing of finishes and things that they're going to use? Or does it just say, I'm going to build a building of 40,000 square feet here?
So the site plan that's included in the
Right.
packet, a preliminary version of that was submitted. I mean, it was a final version at the time, but there were a couple items that needed to be addressed. One was some missing landscaping. I didn't include my full review memo because a lot of those items just weren't relevant to the case tonight. But one item I did call out was the corridor overlay district. Again, not everyone in town knows our code, so not everyone is aware of those requirements. And again, that's staff's job to bring up during any zoning review,
Right,
then inform them. And then obviously, normally building elevations would need to be provided for staff to determine if it meets those requirements. Though it doesn't have to be submitted right when the permit's submitted, just before, demonstrating compliance before approval.
got it. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Nope. All right. Then next, we would like to recognize our applicant to present evidence and testimony.
Again, my name is John Sikorsky. I thank you for being here. My contention is basically 280 is elevated where this is, and it would virtually sit down beneath the line of sight. Jeffrey will follow that. The ordinance is also, I don't believe, takes into the account of self-storage because of the number of doors that you can't get the natural materials on the first row and so on. It would materially affect the ability to build self-storage. So that's why I thought there was some kind of, either compromise or to look at this, how it should be. In 2017, I built at 5693 Old Haywood Road in front of basically High Vista. At that time, they had a 20% ordinance at that point, of which I've complied and have kept it. They have since taken that ordinance off to some extent, because there have been some buildings that have been built without any natural materials. So, to be quite honest with you, it's better for me to hand you Jeffrey. He's a, PE who's much better at showing the line of sight, et cetera, of people on Boylston Highway. Do you want me to hand those out?
Please, hand those in. Thank you for your time. My first time here I guess it's not quite new to y'all, first time for me to be in the new town hall.
Thank
I
you.
worked with Daniel Cobb for years when he was at the city of Brevard. I do a lot of engineering for the town over there. And, but it's a nice boardroom. I'd like to thank your staff as well. They're very helpful through this process in providing documents and what have you. That's first handout. I also have a large, and I did not bring my easel, but it maybe John can hold this. This is the plan view of the site. And you have it as well in your 11 by 17. And as you look at the plan view, I took what's called a cross section. Put it over. There we go. So here's Bolston Highway as a head from Brevard back to Mills River. And the subject property is below Bolston Highway. And I took a cross section, which is a slice through view of the property about approximately about the first time I drive it, you can see for about 3 seconds, you can see into the property. And this is about the last spot that you can really see into it well. Of course, you're driving 60 miles an hour, 280. I go to Brevard 3 times a week and it's,
Not when there's a state trooper.
yeah, then you're on 55. So, but at any rate, so that's what I did, because to me, the key component of this in terms of view shed, which is what the point of the ordinance is we don't want people looking in at metal buildings. We want people to look at nice siding, what have you. I understand. So this is the cross section. Let's hold on both up. And did I give you one? Okay. So here I'm standing at the edge of the road, which is on this map. They'll turn it over. It's where the double A is at the edge of the road. And this is off to scale. And so a normal sight line, as you're going by, you're going to look over top of the building. The maximum rotation of eyeball, if you're not moving, it is about 30 degrees off the horizon. Just if I'm talking, I'll look down in natural 30 degrees. That's fairly consistent. So, somewhere in this range, then if I'm not moving, I'm looking down. I really want to look at some of this frontage here. That I could see, but your average driver who's not stopped and looking off the edge of the road, hopefully, he's keeping forward. His normal line of sight is not going to catch the top. He's not going to catch the top of that building at that front end of that property. Once you go past that, you're beyond it. There's 20 feet from the building to the top of Bolston Island. That's what my survey is. Are there any questions? Did I go too fast? This is pretty common language for me, but I don't want to go too fast for you.
Are you saying there's 20 feet difference in the elevation from the front of the building to the Boston?
Yeah, so if you're at the Boston Highway, it's a 20-foot drop.
I'm vaguely familiar with the area.
Okay, and you're really coming out of Transylvania County, and you come out of that turn, and it's when you're coming right out of that turn before you hit the straightaway where this property is really located.
If I remember right, there's lots of trees up close to the, right now.
There's trees.
Will those still be there?
We have, and we did, what we did is we've doubled the landscaping buffering requirements effectively. Along the frontage, and we also put in larger trees, although I don't think there's necessary on the frontage because it's just so above the site. But the key was, as you're coming out of this turn, this once about 3-second window that you see into this site, you see those trees. We've gone ahead and put a double row on this side, and we did replicate it for our adjoining parcels as well.
Mr. Foster, they have, most of the trees on the property are Bradford pears, which are in essence are weeds. And I do want to get rid of those. Okay, so I can't, I don't.
You're not showing any on the Boston Highway side.
They're right here.
Oh, look at that.
That's what all these are.
Mhm.
But these are what's required in the landscaping ordinance under this zoning, and then these are all they're evergreen.
My contention is that I would rather make this architecturally appeasing with trees rather than the buildings, because you're not gonna see the buildings. And by the way, there'll be a bit of a wall here, and I have the trees, the evergreens below the wall and above the wall to make sure that has a visual break.
Right. But that's a good point. There are a lot of rafters out there, right? But you know, they're not year-round screens.
They look good this week.
They. I follow. So.
Yeah.
That's really the gist of the gist of this part of the presentation. If you have any other questions, glad Mr. Foster is somewhat familiar with the property. Because when you drive by, it just goes by so very quickly. And again, you're well above the road, well above that sign.
Any other questions for the applicants?
I do have a question. The tree line, does it start on the state right of way? Where
The existing tree line?
the exist, yeah, it looks like that's a area of trees. The ordinance says from the right of way is where where the visibility is required. Is that correct? Mr. Mallon?
This is the right of way right here.
Uh-huh.
So all of our, everything you can do practically, it's just inside the right of way. It's feasible. You gotta understand, I don't have the topo here, but this is a steep drop from here to here. I mean, this area is the right of way.
Right.
And so you're looking at dropping nearly 22, 4, 6, 28 feet. You know, and there's so going back planning on this one
Oh, yeah.
steep corner, y'all want to try to stay out of there and put that more near the
Right.
toe.
No,
You can see that ditch line there. So that's where we're really coming in right here.
and you can't plan on the state right of way without their permission.
You can't do hardly anything without DOT's permission.
I'm just trying to get an idea of where, if I understand it, the line of sight is from the right of way, where in this case it's not gonna be.
The line of sight I took just inside the guardrail.
There is guardrail.
That's right. So, because it's effectively a control access right there. It's not, but they're using the guardrail such.
Right.
So we can't get into it. And then the, I look at it, if a passenger's coming by in a vehicle and they're looking over me leaving the property, I'm well above a normal sight line. That's really the point of this exercise.
Stand aside for that. It's about 3 feet.
Yeah, and they're looking at the guardrail before they're looking at the building.
Oh. Oops.
Sorry, I haven't been broadcasting. Okay. I understand. So you took your line of sight, right, standing height versus.
Even a vehicle height, that's right. I took a benefit of it, which is gonna be a little different. Because when you're sitting, you know, you're only about 3.5 feet of the sight line. And I didn't want to be over dramatic. People go, well, that's not realistic. I do a lot of DOT combination work, and we talk about line of sight a lot.
Mhm.
That's a good point.
Question? Any more questions? Not at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Then next, we would like to recognize any person with standing to present evidence or testimony, and we'll give Mr. Malachek the floor to read the written comments that he received. I don't know if they're a party with standing or just a,
They are not.
okay,
So that they're not a party withstanding. They are an adjacent neighbor and they did email some general public comment about this, if the board wishes. to hear
yes.
it. Great.
Okay.
Okay, this email was received from Amy Parker. Hi, Mike, trying to put together my thoughts and concerns. We understand the hearing is about that one building variance. I do have an appraiser in training who is working on getting a letter to indicate the building with natural materials over metal will retain value to our land. Besides that variance, I have a few big concerns that I would like to be addressed as public option. I am not alone in these thoughts. Number one, driveway. Based on the revised plans, it appears as if John wants to build a new entrance to his mini storage units and abandon the existing driveway. The new driveway does not encroach on the existing driveway. Leaving the existing driveway and right-of-way will help John avoid additional personal traffic onto his commercial property. Number two, right-of-way. Revised plans show a retaining wall within the existing right-of-way. Is that illegal for someone to build within an existing right-of-way? Three, trees. There are a lot of beautiful natural trees right now. We would like to advocate for John to be environmentally keen and save the mature trees along the fence line while planting all of his new ones. Loss of the current tree line will reduce our privacy and negatively affect our property value. Number five, lights. We talked and you mentioned Mills River does not have a lights ordinance. Evidence is abundance on the negative effects of light pollution. We would like to advocate for low wattage, downward facing and or motion sensing lights to preserve the privacy and quality of our own property. Number six, crime. Evidence for increase in crime in units that offer 24/7 access is plentiful. What are John's plans for security around his property that will ensure the safety of our own? I'll send some pictures from our porch looking out onto the proposed mini storage units. You'll see how the tear down of the existing trees will cause Boylston Highway to become visibly evident, increasing the noise and decreasing our privacy. Thanks, Amy Parker.
Thank you.
Just a reminder, since the individual did not have standing and since this could be considered opinion, the board should not back that decision.
That's clear. Thank you. All right. Then we now can go into our preliminary discussion. And we still have the option to ask for input from either the town or the applicant.
You knew I'd come up with
Oh,
something.
yeah.
I'm just curious and, because I want to know, if you go by the ordinance, you have to put up some of that, like stack brick or something like that on the sides of the building. What are you going to have instead of stack brick? Or using that as an example? Is it just going to be like a normal, let's say Morton built building with metal things?
I try to build nice beige buildings
Okay,
that are clean and upkeep. And please, if anybody would like to, as I've said, I built in 2017 right in front of High Vista. And, people have commented on how nice looking they are. In that case, I put cypress on the fronts. I have an office, and so it looks, like a wall. In this case, we haven't even spoken about, but I plan on making an office that looks like a log cabin in a, sort of D-log sense, to try to keep architectural integrity and heritage back to the.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Question?
It's really just
Discussion.
more, or a general question of what we're allowed to ask. We heard the email.
We don't want to ask questions about things that are brought up in that.
If they're related to the variance, which is basically, I think, limited
Siding.
to,
Just deciding.
Yeah.
So then that clarifies.
I have a question for our zoning administrator. Could you, without reading it exactly, what is the purpose of this zoning ordinance for the
For the corridor overlay district, without reading it, right here.
Spirit of law.
I've been informed, basically it was adopted, we're having a lot of commercial developments come into the town. And so there were a lot of metal and basically concrete buildings going up, especially ones of a larger size. And so in order to preserve the agricultural rural character of the town, this ordinance was adopted. So natural materials were incorporated into these buildings. And again, just to clarify, any non-residential building within 500 feet of the road, the ordinance says has to comply. It's only when the wall is visible from the right of way, you have to have 75% acceptable materials or natural looking materials. Building walls not visible from the road, but still within 500 feet, the ordinance says 40% acceptable or natural materials. And then there's also a provision in the code to break up, long facades of a building. So if we have like a 200-foot long warehouse, every 20 feet, there needs to be some type of architectural element, change in material, change in depth of the building to again break up those long facades. But that's my understanding generally.
Okay. My next question is the visibility of that material, that front of the commercial building, reckoning from only looking out of vehicles or also walking and bicycling?
Now I will read the code. So again, just to clarify, the ordinance says right here, applicability, and it says all non-residential and multifamily structures located within 500 feet of the following roads shall be required to comply with these design requirements. And obviously 280 or Boylston Highway is listed. So I applied the regulations because basically I measured on GIS, and the furthest building away from Boylston Highway from the edge of the road is within 500 feet. So that's step one. Then if you go into the actual materials, that's when we start talking about visibility from the right of way. If you want to look at your ordinance in the packet, it is 154.046C, design requirements, and just below that, 1A, and it states walls visible from the right of way of any of the roads listed above shall use at least 75% acceptable materials. Walls not visible from the right of way shall use 40% acceptable materials. So the distance is what triggers the requirement. The visibility is what determines the level of the requirement.
So if I'm understanding you right, or hearing you right, and the way I'm understanding it, you're talking primarily, it's this building that's really the problem. Am I right? Or is it going to fall onto the other three are going to need a lower amount of architecturally compliant with the rules?
I wouldn't necessarily say that, and one of the reasons, after discussing this with the applicant, that I recommended he apply for the variance is I felt I was doing too much interpretation of the code and basically exceeding my, if I had made a decision about that, I thought I would have exceeded my authority in basically interpreting, what's visible, what's not, and what should be applied.
Thank you.
The fact of the matter is when I did my review, and happy to pull it up on GIS, just to demonstrate briefly. One moment. So basically what I just did was took the measuring tool, and again, this is all approximate. But if we just measure the distance, even from the edge of the road at the guardrail here to approximately this back corner, we're at 475 feet. So that, if I now switch over to the site plan, one moment. So basically, and again, this is approximate, but I estimated that that would include all of the buildings. So all of the buildings, again, as I read the code, are within 500 feet and have to require. It's beyond me to assume, which ones are visible from the right of way, and which walls are visible based on the site and the change in elevation.
in its location, the right of way is not the edge of pavement. Extends a good bit beyond the edge of pavement and down the bank. Just, something to think about. It's not. A lot of roads, right of way is the edge of pavement or the ditch. In this case, it's purchased right of way the state owns. This is fee simple right of way, state property. And it extends down the bank beyond the ditch.
That's right. And again, that's where staff or myself was, uncomfortable with how that should be interpreted. And additionally, part of the reason the applicant applied for a variance is, these buildings are covered with tons of roll-up doors, on certain sides of the building. And it's just a matter of fact, those doors take up so much of that wall area and are not considered an acceptable material. It's almost infeasible to be able to incorporate enough materials to comply. And again, that's where staff felt uncomfortable, making a decision at that point.
Yet zoning says self-storage is permissible in this zoning.
All
Yeah.
uses of the base district are allowed.
Right,
It's just whether the building type itself can comply with
Got
this
it.
requirement.
okay.
And the
Thank you.
roll-up doors do, because of the surface area of those roll-up doors. The roll-up doors themselves can't comply, because it would be totally infeasible to have a brick facade on a roll-up.
Correct.
That would be ridiculous.
And the ordinance actually states those doors are not considered an acceptable material.
May I make a comment? In this part of the request is they are acceptable in this zone, and I've run into this before in other entities, as you would. And because storage units are a very different beast. We're not building one big box, which you could, I've got one door and it's a shop, and we can look at the siding on the sides. I've got so many sides of which you made a great point. Even from the road, if someone's walking or looking, which building might they see? They probably only see the frontage of the first building. So, this particular ordinance seems excessive to some degree when you're looking at storage units. I understand it if it was a large building rotated a little bit more and you have multiple view sheds. But particularly from that frontage side, I think you brought out that point to me, and that's what I want to say, that they're acceptable, but the ordinance really doesn't quite, and I haven't seen an ordinance that really addresses storage buildings very well, quite frankly, anywhere. So they're tough things to handle because the material thing. Thank you.
Okay. Could you not have roll-up doors or overhead doors that are made out of wood or wood-like material?
I would think they'd be hard for security. But if the door is a different color from the building, you've got something breaking the building there.
It sounds to me like it would be very difficult for this type of building to meet the letter of the law, because the doors themselves are not acceptable. And yet you've got so many of them that, you would really only be talking about in between those doors is the only place you could put brick or rock, fake rock or whatever.
And you're gonna have some truck knocking it off right away. Well, we had that building last year over across from Ingalls and then down the road. And it was a box. And they were able to work it out. And it was a compromise too, as I recall. You remember the one I'm talking about? Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it
no.
wasn't storage. It was
Manufacturing.
an office storage kind of thing.
Clarify one thing. Looks to me, we have 4 buildings here. Large building, right? And then the smaller one is the active office or climate control.
That's climate control, sir.
Yeah. all four of these buildings, they're within the 500 feet. All four. Only one is visible from Morrison Highway.
I'm not even sure it's.
Question?
No, I'm just thinking zoning didn't deny it though. I said zoning hasn't denied it.
No, the type of building,
Right.
no.
Is the drop like 20 feet? I've never been out there.
It is a steep slope, but I can't. I don't know the exact
Well,
amount.
a licensed surveyor could produce that.
Yeah, 'cause I'm usually one of those 60-mile-an-hour people. I don't have time to look at it.
Other questions, Mr. Moore?
I was just gonna. So the buildings that are not visible still have to have some percentage. Still have to have 40% because they're within the 500 feet,
If they are visible,
have to have 75%.
Yeah.
Is that correct? So the request is for none of the buildings to have
Any of.
any of it.
Here's another question. If the building has to have something to break up the building, do you have to have it on both sides or just the side facing Boylston? I'm just curious.
that's a question for our
Yes,
planning
it is.
director.
The only thing the ordinance states is every 20 feet of the building shall include one of the following elements. When we've applied it to buildings in the past, including, an industrial warehouse in Broad Point, it's been every side.
Okay, thank you.
But everything is based on walls visible. If the walls are not visible from the right of way,
Right. Then it,
it's not determined.
The way the ordinance reads is any non-residential structure within 500 feet must comply.
Mhm.
And then the second part of that is if it's visible, or if that wall is visible, you have to have 75% materials. If the wall's not, you have to have 40%, but it's that distance from the roadway that triggers it.
the linear feet, so to speak.
Correct.
Yeah.
But question be an acceptable use, this property by zoning is a storage building. Would it be a hardship to design a storage building that would work and meet this code? Is that what we're looking at really? To have, this type of storage building with their numerous doors, because without doors, you can't
You don't have a
have
storage
except-
building.
Right, you can't have an individual space without a door to access it. And I'm assuming the doors would be on both sides, of this building, have a front and a back with most a space that big. You may have some, but for the most part, they're gonna be on each side. So did the zoning ordinance that allows storage facilities like this contemplate this? Would it be a hardship to have to design a storage building would meet this because of the roll-up doors? That alone, does that pose a hardship there?
Is it impossible or is it costly?
Well, anything's possible if you're willing to pay for it. Mike, another question I have or a comment. Of storage buildings that I've seen, and not this one, well, it's not built yet, but others just driving around and you see them. You don't have a lot of wall, you have a lot of door. Because they want to make as much entrance and exit as possible to get in there. So no matter what happens, it's gonna be challenging. It almost says you can't, you're gonna end up with no just plain old wall. You're gonna have something going on there.
The old ordinance up on Old Haywood Road in 2017. I did this, the buildings have an 8'4" exposure. The doors are at 7'4". And there is, I think it's 16 inches, the jams in between. And it happened to come out to 19.8% of
Of
the
wall.
building. And I said, I can't get to 20, but I put this barn-like exterior on the office part, which had a peak on it. And it got me to 30-something% in total.
Okay. Thank you. Any more discussion where we would like to get questions answered from the applicant or staff?
I'm done.
Then I would,
There is one other thing we thought about while doing this. And this being Boylston Highway, I could make a contention that the front of the buildings are really the south of the building. Because ultimately the property is on this type of angle with Jeffrey's.
I'll hold
probably
this
better
one.
at explaining
I'll hold it
this.
while you point it.
So therefore, we could put hardy plank, which is what, does everybody know what hardy plank is? And that is what, the Summit Storage did on Boylston Highway and Old Haywood. A couple of years ago or a year or so ago, along those, what I would call an end cap. Obviously, I told you before, the office would be D-logs and totally natural. And maybe we could put some on these end caps just to make any visible drive-bys.
That, the last open view shed really after the trees mature. That would be the idea.
okay. Thank you. Any other questions at this time before we close the evidentiary hearing?
I would ask Hardy board. That's an artificial wood texture, not usually molded into that, at least what's on my house. Is that, would that be considered acceptable?
It is, and it has been
So,
used in projects in the past. And it's natural or natural looking. Another example is the Lowe's warehouse above Mills River Brewery. That's actually all concrete, but they stamped it with a wood grain look. And I didn't approve it, but whoever did at the time considered that acceptable as well.
so what we can do is we can issue a variance for no compliance or some compliance that we determine is reasonable.
Yep, it lists in the ordinance that acceptable materials, rock, artificial, natural looking rock, timber, artificial, wood grain look, brick, natural stone, artificial natural stone look, wood shingle and artificial shingle look, or other materials as approved by the zoning administrator that has the appearance of a natural material.
Sounds
Hardy board is not mentioned.
except as a artificial
Artificial
wood grain.
wood grain look,
Okay,
that would be basically under that.
artificial shingle look or
Yeah,
other, yeah.
same. Yeah. Any other questions? Where we need input from the applicant or town? If not, I would like to entertain a motion to close the evidence portion of our hearing.
So moved.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
That part of the hearing is closed. Now we have the deliberation of the board, considering all the factors set out in the ordinance. We know what the ordinance, we have a copy of it. We know what the goals are. We know what the limits are. And we know that there's a challenge with putting this development fitting these rules and regulations.
Do we need to have, the Hardy board spelled out in something as a condition that we either impose or make sure that
It
We-
has to be
We're all-
part of the
we're all
variance.
comfortable that is what's agreed upon.
That is if we basically want to make a proposal to give a variance with conditions, we would have to spell out the conditions. But to basically come to a variance, we have to
Have reasons.
the four standards, we have to basically have motions on and vote on those. And then in the end, if we agree with a majority, 4 out of 5 or 3 out of 5? 4 out of 5 on all these standards, we can make a variance, a conditional variance, or a variance with conditions. Right, correct me if I'm.
The condition is if the board chooses, again, the ordinance states the material is at the discretion of the zoning administrator, but again, that's at the discretion of the board. The main variance is about applying the corridor overlay architectural requirements to the buildings.
Discussion. Or deliberation, excuse me.
I feel like that. You know, if this is an allowed use. In this zoning district. It doesn't really specify what type of a storage, so. This is a type of storage unit. It doesn't all have to be just one big box. If it was just one big box, it'd be different. Because this particular type of, storage units are allowed. It would be definitely a hardship to try to meet the strict application because of all the roll-up doors. That alone takes up so much of that space, you really can't get that to work. So I feel like the strict application would be a hardship.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
Certainly, that was a good time. Okay, I make a motion that unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance. This is an approved use, an allowed use in the zoning district. And it's not specified as to what type building design has to be used for a storage shed, storage units. So unnecessary hardship would result from trying to make every bit. That's a very long motion, and I apologize for that. So let me revise and amend my motion that unnecessary hardship would result from the strict application of the ordinance.
I think we have to,
You have to have a reason.
because of the type of facility this is. It is virtually impossible because it is an allowed facility. It's virtually impossible to meet the 75%.
I'll second.
okay? Or any discussion on this motion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All right. Next.
We're still deliberating on this one.
Boom.
It's hard to say it's peculiar to the property, but it is a peculiar to the use. Because of this type of use it is. Which is allowed in this zoning district. I don't know that the property itself. Because we're looking at the siding.
That are. But in a way, the topography. I know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, the topography actually benefits because you can't see it from the road.
Right, and once the trees grow.
I can
it's
see it from the right of
breezy.
way. Once the trees are growing up, sure, the buffer especially.
But it states the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography,
Which
or use.
If it says or use, then.
No, I'm just adding
Right.
that.
Is that something?
that are common.
All four standards must be shown.
Well, he's not even using basically the condition, he's not even citing that as one of his problems.
Just a quick statement. Just in your variance cheat sheet that you're reading from,
Mhm.
those are just examples, so don't
Yeah.
feel bound by.
So
that.
we can add use.
It's
yeah.
completely at the board's
Ah.
determination.
Okay. Well, in that case, want me to try another motion?
Mm-hmm.
And
Go for it.
keep it short.
Short
Okay.
and sweet.
Brevity is, key. Okay. I make a motion that the hardship results from conditions that are peculiar to the property, such as location, size, or topography, or an approved use on this property, which this is.
Okay, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right. Next, the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant. That's a general statement. No, you're going fine.
You're on a roll.
Okay, then I will make a motion that the hardship did not result from the actions taken by the applicant or property owner in locating an approved use on this property.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 4, the requested variance is consistent with spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved. And the purpose of this and the preservation of the aesthetic rural character of the community is maintained. Because that's what we have to consider before you make a motion. Because the variance is a request to basically don't apply this ordinance at all or partial. That's up to us. We can give the variance that basically say, okay, it doesn't apply. Or we can say it applies to a certain extent and then we got to say what extent.
Okay, if we give him the variance carte blanche,
Mhm.
then we're also giving him an out on fixing the office building with his wood and making it look that way. So is this the point where we start putting in our restrictions? For instance, the required variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such as the public safety, so on and so forth. With the direction that the office building be totally sided in a wood type siding to give it a log cabin look. You know, but is that where we start putting in our,
It's up to us. We can put that
Okay.
in. And then we will repeat that in the final approval of the variance.
This is, put that in.
We
I
can
mean,
add
everybody,
this-
no offense, but everybody can say what they want to say, but later it's, oops.
Would we accept the drawing with the hardy plank as a piece of evidence or and accept that and approve it according to the spirit of that drawing? I don't know that we could say exactly that drawing because there's no dimensions on it, or there may be dimensions up to scale.
Yeah.
So we would approve it based on that particular drawing, mark it as exhibit.
Would it make sense to say that materials aside the roll-up doors or whatever you call them, freight doors or cargo doors or bay doors, all the other material used for the building has to match the material requirements in the ordinance under 1B, C1B.
But that's what he's trying to avoid doing on the storage buildings, if I understood everything right. Because of,
Well, that's
Yeah.
fine, but
So in between, is now an okay time? Can I ask staff a question?
you can.
Technically, the.
Technically
evidence
not,
is
but
Close, but
that's okay.
I defer to Jeff.
Yes.
So the, in between those doors, 16 inches wide. Yes, sir. And that would be a hardship, the hardy plank, 16 inches wide. Pace.
Or
If you come up to the podium, the microphone, that's better.
Ms. Ray Gardner. I didn't pronounce that right.
It's okay.
Mentioned, they do kind of drive into the buildings. And I did put cypress up on, up on Old Haywood between the things. But ultimately, there's plastic that holds it in. Okay, but I will do what you instruct me to do. It might be harder with hardy plank, to be quite frank. Just because of its rigid.
Okay, thank you. For discussion, I don't think it's a matter that it has to be hardy plank. It has to be material that
looks natural.
fits the description.
And it could be on that one building. And then the others, since they're not visible. And it's hard to get 40%.
I think 40% is not so much with the variance, we can do whatever. Because we can totally relieve the variance of this project,
Period.
period. But I think that it's already visible from the candidate's proposal that they're willing to do something. we may ask for a little bit more than what they initially are willing for.
I think we also need to go with the spirit of why it was drawn, which is to stop Mills River looking like stretches of 25 going through the Naples area and that kind of stuff. I mean, really and truly, we have a special place that we live in here. Times change. We're not all gonna look like 1842 anymore. But we don't have to look like a slum either. So we have to, some control has to go in here, but reasonable. The larger, now I'm asking you again, the larger thing that he showed of this, where he, with the little green markings and stuff, would that suffice as what we are requiring him to do?
If the board wishes to adopt this plan as a condition, the board is welcome to. I will just need to document this
Right.
immediately at the conclusion of the meeting,
Got it.
and put it into the evidence as an exhibit and for staff.
Thank you.
That's good. Okay.
Honestly,
Thank you.
we looked at this as what we thought people could see.
I think the important part is that we, if we're thinking about approving a variance, that we clearly let as much as possible of the spirit and the intent of the rule, the rules,
Ordinance
whatever the
drawer.
ordinance in place. And I personally don't think that we should look at what you can see from a car. I think it is visibility, period. Because that's the whole purpose of this ordinance.
Yeah, the ordinance says visible from the right of way.
Yeah.
So
So it's not even looking at what the road is doing.
No, and I think we can take that in consideration.
Yeah.
But the spirit of the ordinance is visibility. And what is it gonna look 20 years from now or 10 years from now when you drive with your horse over 280? I mean, who knows? It's what does Mills River try to achieve with this ordinance? That's what we gotta keep in mind. I think that's my opinion. Not saying, but you gotta think.
Well, we haven't done our
Well,
fourth.
we're
thing yet, right.
basically talking about number 4.
Yeah.
The requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance.
I don't know that I'm ready on this one.
You've
But
done 3.
looking to my right.
Yeah, I know you are. She's. Just give me a minute. It's consistent with the spirit.
And you can change the language in this standard.
Well, I think the variance would be consistent if the appropriate conditions is that, you get as much as you can, or some, you can't get it all, but we might, might could get some,
Well, we're not getting
So-
it all and he's not getting it all.
we're not getting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the town gets the natural looking material as much as possible,
Possible.
reasonable. In that case, I would say, yes, the variance is consistent.
You want to do it?
with the condition,
with the
with the
condition.
condition.
So why don't I give it one more shot? I've talked too much.
You're
Yeah.
I make a motion that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved with conditions. Should I say with appropriate
With-
conditions?
The
Appropriate.
following conditions, can you,
Okay, let me try that again. Let me revise and extend my remarks. I've been watching. I make a motion that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, such that public safety is secured and substantial justice is achieved with the following conditions: that the natural material, the maximum to the extent shown on the exhibit, which we'll call exhibit 1, exhibit 2, is installed.
I would like to,
Be more specific.
yeah, I would like to propose the condition. I agree with the first part of the
Okay,
motion.
I'll withdraw my motion. Sorry.
I would like to have everybody think about the potential of stating it a little bit different, that all materials, relatively speaking, outside of the roll-up doors or the whatever doors you call them, fits the definition of the materials in this ordinance.
Is that on all the buildings or
Yeah.
just building 1?
All the buildings.
On the ends. Can I give it a shot? Okay. I move that the requested variance is consistent with the spirit, purpose, and intent of the ordinance, which is to maintain as much of a rural view and outlook of buildings built in Mills River. I further. Okay. And in order to do so with this variance, we would require the short ends of the buildings, the office building, the climate controlled building, and on building number, I'm going to call it number 1, the one closest to Boylston Highway, that a certain part of that building, which has been marked on an exhibit that will go in, will be of a natural or a natural type material.
Sorry, just a point of clarity. So you're going back to the applicants.
I'm going back to this.
Okay.
I would like to push it a little further.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So get it seconded and get it in. Get it seconded and then say any discussion
Okay.
and then you can.
Good. So we have a motion.
Has not been seconded yet.
Do I have a second? Okay. I would like to propose a slight amendment to this motion whereby all materials beside the overhead doors fit the requirement as listed in the C1B description.
And that would be for all the walls,
All
whether
the walls.
visible or not.
Yep.
On all the buildings.
Motion for my amendment. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Did we have a clear enough amendment?
Yeah.
No, that's fine. We know. Okay. Do we need a second for that then? Or do we just vote? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
We still deliberating the motion?
No, we're just
Oh.
gonna grant the motion or not now.
I mean, the whole motion, was it the condition? My question would be, is the condition, does it have to be acceptable to both parties? Or we can oppose it?
We,
I've said, thanks.
all in favor of this?
Granting the
Aye.
motion?
Granting. Aye,
Aye. Didn't we?
all right, then what we need to do is basically decide to or have a motion to approve the variance with conditions. And we need to list the conditions again?
Correct.
Okay.
And just a point of clarity for staff. In your last motion, you basically stated the materials listed in that section should be incorporated on any building wall that does not have a roll-up door.
Yep.
So for example, if the climate controlled building has no roll-up doors, the board is stating they want 100% coverage. Okay, understood.
Or as long as there's no windows or doors, you know. Yeah.
And sorry, that's for all buildings on the site.
Yes.
I do, you have a question, 100% coverage
Well,
rather than the 40?
following the regulations, you don't go over the regulations.
Regulation.
Yeah.
So
So
it made
it's-
100% of the,
75%.
A 40 or a
40%.
75, yeah.
But I'm sorry to complicate it. If those building walls are not visible from the right of way, which percentage do I apply? 75 or 40?
40.
40,
Okay,
because that's what's in the regulation. Walls not visible from the right of way of any of the roads listed shall use at least 40% acceptable interiors. What my intent is, let me just explain it a little bit, is the roll-up doors are the problem. So I want to make an exception for those roll-up doors. All the other stuff, follow the rules.
understood. So again, for all the building walls that do not have roll-up doors, 40% acceptable materials would be applied. Perfect.
Yes. Are we in agreement
Mhm.
that still?
it would be as much as you can get.
Yeah.
So if what's left over is
No.
15% after the roll-up doors, then you would 15%. Up to 40% of the wall. If there's no roll-up doors, it would be.
Yeah.
ordinance.
Okay, so now we need to have a motion to approve the variance with those conditions that we just spelled out. Because we have our 4 findings of fact in place. To my right.
I move that we grant the variance request 23-01 with the following guidelines? No, conditions. That roll-up doors be allowed where showing on the plans with the proper materials for roll-up doors. The balance of the walls of all other buildings need to comply with or with corridor overlay district 154 plus 0.046 sub C, sub 1, sub A and B, namely 75% of natural or natural type material visible from the right of way. If not visible from the right of the way, must have at least 40% of acceptable materials.
That's a motion. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Variance approved with conditions.
So effectively, just for a question, Mr. Belichick, all they're really saying is deduct the square footage of the door. And then apply effectively 40%, but have to be accepted here.
Correct. So
When variance could just that, we're just gonna deduct roll door. That calculation.
we will deduct rolling doors and apply the calculation to the rest of the building.
That balance, okay.
Yeah.
Before we continue, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have one question, just so that you know, the end caps that I showed you.
Mm-hmm.
with already, normally I put doors on those, but I won't if, you understand what I'm saying? It just gets a better mix sometimes, but I don't have a problem making those.
Very good.
So the board has taken a vote, and so the final step would be a motion and vote to close and adjourn the hearing.
Yes.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Thank you. Meeting adjourned.
Sorry, that is just to adjourn the hearing, not the
Oh.
meeting.
Well, I thought.
We're not
I
done
was-
yet.
Oh, next. I'd like to entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Make a motion with you.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay.
It may mess with the integrity of the